So, Mike, at first, thinking about doing a show on the Titanic, I felt like I was going to have to dig really hard to find anything that can be weird enough to mention.
Honestly, I was scared that you were going to make me watch the movie because I still haven't seen it to this day, and I refuse.
Oh, you've never seen that movie?
Never.
Oh.
I made a vow when I was in high school that I would never, ever see it.
Wow.
And to this day, I've upheld that vow.
Oh, wow.
I still have not seen it. I made a deal with my girlfriend, though, because she's never seen a Star Wars movie the whole way through. So I made a deal if she sat down and watched Empire Strikes Back that I would watch the Titanic. But I still haven't watched the Titanic because I told her she's got to watch it first.
And it's never happened?
No, she said I have to watch it first. I said she has to watch it first, and we're in a standoff. So
Stalemate.
Yeah, I still have not seen it.
The end of the movie infuriates me. I would have waited for that chick to fall asleep and pushed her right off that floaty door. See you later.
Fuck you, bitch. I'm surfing away on this door.
I've survived too much. Thanks for showing me your boobies and all, bud.
Yeah, I appreciate the boobs, but, this is a survival situation. And we just met, and,
So what's one of the first things that you came across about the Titanic that was suspect?
Well, before we get into the weird stuff, maybe for people that only know that it was a ship that sunk, maybe we should give at least a little bit of a background on the Titanic itself.
Good call.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. But the Titanic was a ship in the White Star Line, and it was built after another ship in the same line. It's a luxury cruise liner, and it was built after, I think it was called the Olympic, was the one that was built before. It sunk on its maiden voyage. The maiden voyage was, I think it was April 14th, and it sunk over the night of April 14th in 1912, and through to the morning of April 15th. After it, the official story is that it collided with an iceberg and in the northern Atlantic Ocean, and it's estimated that about half of the 2,200 passengers and crew on board the ship died. Some estimates say more, some say around the halfway mark. But it's on record as being one of the deadliest commercial maritime disasters in modern history. And it sunk on its, like I said, on its maiden voyage. Tons of people died, and there's a shitty movie. Well, I shouldn't say a shitty movie because I never saw it. Apparently, by all accounts, it's a wonderful movie, and I'm just being a stubborn asshole. But it became a movie, and people love Leonardo DiCaprio, and he dies at the end. So I'm sorry to spoil it for anyone who hasn't seen it yet, but I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it, and I know he dies, so
yeah.
You know what? Fuck off if you're offended by that.
How old is that movie? That thing's got to be like 15 years old. It's
probably like 20 years old.
Really?
I was in high school when it came out.
I didn't want to say 20, damn it.
No, it's probably, actually, hold on. I'm looking it up right now. It was made in 1997. So it's more than 20 years old at this point.
Oh, God.
Yeah. We're fucking old.
Oh.
God, no, I want to sink just like the Titanic. just let me go. Just let me drift away. I'm old. I'm useless. But I mean, that's pretty much the gist of it. Big ass ship, luxury passenger liner, sunk on its maiden voyage after colliding with an iceberg. Half the people died, half the people escaped, and that's the official story. But there is this crazy thing. The ship itself is called the Titanic, which, Titanic meaning super gargantuan and huge. There was a book that was published in 1889 written by Morgan Robertson, and this book was titled Wreck of the Titan. This book detailed the sinking of a luxury passenger ship after hitting an iceberg and killing half the crew on board, or half the crew and passengers. The ship was called the Titan.
Wow.
Yeah. And there's a lot of similarities between what happened in the book and what actually happened. I mentioned before that the Olympic was the ship that came out before, but this novel was written even before the Olympic existed. I think the Olympic was designed maybe a year before the Titanic.
It launched in 1910.
Okay, so 2 years before the Titanic.
Mm-hmm.
And so this predated that as well. And in the book, the ship sank in April in the North Atlantic. And in the book, there were not enough lifeboats on board for the passengers, just like the Titanic. And the Titan itself was 800 feet long, whereas the Titanic was 882 feet long. The speed that the Titan was going in the book when it collided with the iceberg was 25 knots. The Titanic was going 21 knots. In the book, the Titan was described as being unsinkable. Later, the Titanic would also be described as being unsinkable.
Now, this almost is too good to be true. I mean, the people who built the Titanic had to know of this book, right?
I mean, I don't know how popular the book was, but the fact that it existed and there's all these similarities, it's got to be more than coincidence.
Yeah.
As I mentioned, that the Titanic had a shortage of lifeboats. The Titanic had 16 lifeboats, and then there were 4 folding lifeboats, and that would be less than half the amount required for if the ship was at full capacity of 3,000. Now, I've read that the reason for this was on the maiden voyage they were going to be rendezvousing with another ship in the North Atlantic. So they knew the ship was going to be nearby, so they didn't bother with all the lifeboats, thinking that if they needed to, they could put people on lifeboats, send them over to this other ship, and then send the lifeboats back and then carry the rest of the people over. That wasn't what happened, obviously.
Yeah, that's a dangerous assumption. That doesn't seem logical at all.
Yeah. But in the book, the Titan carried the least amount that it was allowed to by law.
Ah.
And both the Titan and the Titanic sunk 400 miles away from Newfoundland.
That's crazy.
It is. I mean, especially having it's just so many similarities, and the similarity in the name.
It's even if we can safely assume that the people involved with the Titanic knew about this book, and maybe even just took the name and the whole idea, whoever, financed this, was taken from inspiration from this book.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know, the similarities of the destruction are so similar. It almost seems like the sinking of the Titanic was on purpose as well.
Yeah, it does seem that way, and maybe it was. There's a lot of weird things involved with the sinking. Maybe it wasn't even the Titanic at all.
Well, that is one theory, and it was written about by one Robin Gardenier, and he wrote a book called Titanic, the Ship That Never Sank, and he talks about the Olympic, as you had mentioned earlier, and they said it was virtually identical. There's some experts that say there was like a certain row of like windows that would be able to tell you that one was the Olympic, that was the trait that it had or something like that, but they're virtually identical. But he said that it was the Olympic that sank, and it was done intentionally because there was a group of insurance owners that JP Morgan wanted dead. So he had this ship sunk.
Well, with the Olympic, there was also the before the maiden voyage of the Titanic, the Olympic got into a crash with Navy vessel. And it was found to be that the Olympic was to blame for the collision, even though a lot of witnesses and the crew aboard the Olympic claimed that it was the Navy ship's fault, but all blame was pointed at the Olympic. And as a result, this it bent the keel, and as a result, the ship had a permanent list that went to the port side. And because it was found to be the Olympic's fault that the collision took place, the insurance wouldn't pay out. So they basically had to take a loss for the ship. So what is being proposed is that the Titanic was built and the names were switched, and the Olympic was patched up after it was found that they wouldn't be able to get the insurance for it. They patched it up as best they could, and they slapped the name Titanic on it. And then the real Titanic, once it was completed, got the name Olympic. And one of the survivors of the Titanic, a guy by the name of Lawrence Beasley, who wrote about, he actually wrote about the sinking. But he said during the voyage, he had noticed that the Titanic kept listing to the port side. And he would notice as he was watching through the portholes that they could see on the horizon, they were able to tell that they were listing. And there was another guy who backed him up. He was another survivor named Norman Chambers, who actually testified after the whole incident took place. And he said that there was also a list that was a few degrees, and that he had noticed it all afternoon leading up to the accident. The way that the ships were designed were that there were only a few parts of the ship that actually had the name of the ship, and the ship's name was also on the lifeboats, which would have been easily removed and replaced with other lifeboats with a different name on it. And other than on the side of the ship, the name would have been on the bell, the nameplates on the compass, and just things that would have been easy to remove. All they had to do was either bolt over the name on the side of the ship or repaint it.
Which is all very possible.
Yeah, and because these were part of the White Star line of ships, and because of that, almost everything else on the ships were interchangeable between any other ship in the White Star fleet. Now, there was also the fact that all other ships in the White Star line had the name engraved into the hull itself, but the Titanic had its nameplate riveted over the top of the hull.
So it very well could say Olympic underneath there.
Well, and there's apparently recent pictures that were taken of the wreck underwater, and there's a part where between two riveted plates it's rusted or it fell off or something, but you can see under where the rivets were, and apparently you can make out the letters MP stamped into the hull. No way. Yeah, well, that's what's being alleged. I myself have not seen the pictures, so I can't comment on that, but that is what is being alleged.
Let's look these pictures up. Yeah, I'm not even going to comment on these either, dude. They're very hard to make out, and it's like the figures on Mars, man. I don't know. It's that bad.
Yeah. Well, let's just say that if you look at photographs of the Olympic and photographs of the Titanic, they do look almost identical.
Yeah, those ships are very, very similar. I mean, I was shocked to see how similar they were. It almost looks like a joke picture. It's the same ship.
Yeah. But the idea with Gardner's book is he's proposing that this was due as an insurance cover-up, or this was done as an insurance cover-up. And he also, in this book, proposes the theory that another ship hit the Titanic.
Whoa.
And he even goes so far as to say that it was a ship called the Californian. And afterwards, the Californian fired off distress rockets.
Does he have any witnesses saying this, or is this just a theory for him?
This was more theory on his part. He was talking about the first officer, Murdoch, who was on the bridge, and Captain Smith would have also been on the bridge as well. But he's saying that they didn't see the iceberg because it wasn't actually an iceberg. It was a rescue ship, the Californian, that was drifting with its lights out. And I think what he's proposing is that the ship was in the area to help the survivors when the actual planned sinking took place.
Ooh.
And the lights were off, so no one would see it. And the Titanic ended up crashing into the Californian. And then the Californian sent the distress rockets. But no one came to rescue because the Californian was supposed to be the rescue ship. But if I remember correctly, I think I recall hearing some survivors saying that in the distance they were able to see the lights from other ships, but no ships came to rescue them.
Whoa, imagine that. How shitty that would feel.
Yeah. But there's a whole other theory that this wasn't an insurance scam and that it was Sank in order to eliminate opposition to the creation of the Federal Reserve Bank. And there were a bunch of people who died on that ship that were opposed to it that were very influential, such as there was a rich businessman named Benjamin Guggenheim, and he was on the ship. He was opposed to the creation of the Federal Reserve Bank. And then there was Isidor Strauss, who was a businessman who later became a politician in the United States House of Representatives from New York. And he was only in service for a year when he died, but he was also the co-owner of Macy's department store. And he was opposed to the Federal Reserve. He also ended up dying on the ship. There was another man, his name's John Jacob Astor IV, and he was apparently the richest man in the world at the time, and he was a close friend of Nikola Tesla as well, but he had been very outspoken about his opposition to the creation of the Federal Reserve, and he was known as a real estate builder and an inventor, but he was also on board the Titanic, and he died. And J.P. Morgan, along with one of his best friends, were both supposed to be on the Titanic. His friend being Milton Hershey, that you might know him from the delicious candy bars. But they were both supposed to be on the maiden voyage, and J.P. Morgan even had his own private suite with a private deck and everything. But he canceled literally at the last minute before the Titanic took off. So you've got these influential guys that were opposed to the creation of the Federal Reserve, and then J.P. Morgan, who's a really powerful banker who was for the creation of the Federal Reserve. And furthermore, J.P. Morgan was the owner of the White Star Fleet. Or I shouldn't say he was the owner. He was the owner of International Mercantile Marine, which owned the White Star Line. So he owned the company that owned this line of ships.
Yeah, if anybody can plan something like this, plan sinking, it's him.
Mm-hmm. And to follow this book, it's crazy. But there's a lot of weird facts that kind of coincide with this. On board the Titanic, there were no red flares, which would be a signal for any rescue boats. The only flares they had on board the Titanic were white flares, which are used to signal that everything is okay.
Why would they? That's ridiculous.
Yeah. This ship, it was known to be unsinkable. and it had all these doors that would seal the decks, so that if there was a flood on one deck, they could seal it off so that it wouldn't affect higher ones. And this thing, it was designed to stay afloat even if there were 4 decks that had been flooded. And the Titanic had 5 that flooded, which caused it to start sinking. But it also had the ability to seal decks electromagnetically, which would also be used to seal people below the deck. So I think that I've heard that that was supposed to be something that happened, but I think it was debunked. But that like the poorer passengers, the ones that had the lower decks, they were sealed or locked in their decks so that the rich could escape. I've heard that was just a fabrication.
Yeah, it sounds like a little bit of a urban legend add-on to the story.
Yeah. But the captain, Captain Edward Smith, was one of the most decorated captains of his time, and it would have been out of character for him to take a ship on its maiden voyage and avoiding all the precautions that, like, not having enough lifeboats and not having red flares. So that's kind of fishy. The year after all these people died that were opposed to the Federal Reserve ended up being formed. And just as kind of another weird thing, the guy, the author of the Wreck of the Titan, Morgan Robertson, he was actually poisoned a few years after the sinking of the Titanic.
No way.
Yeah.
Wow. So what did James Cameron do? I mean, I know he was on about the Titanic for a long time, but I didn't pay any attention to it.
I don't know. Apparently he went underwater and filmed it and stuff. Heard he made a movie about it.
Oh, did he? He made a whole movie about it?
Yeah, I think so. I think, what was it called? I think it was called The Titanic, actually. Or maybe just Titanic. Yeah, it had some asshole named Leonardo on it.
Oh, I mean, like, he, like, went searching for it, like, diving for it and shit. I thought he made, like, a documentary movie of that.
Yeah, no, I know, I was just being noise. I'm pretty sure he did do a documentary about it as well, or at least a documentary was made as a result of his excursions to the Titanic. But I guess he was part of a group that developed this new technology that had never been used before up until that point. And it was used just to get the Titanic, like film the Titanic and stuff.
I watched their little animation on how they thought the Titanic went down. That was pretty horrible. That had to suck.
What? How the thing broke in half?
Yeah, having it snap and fall back down.
Yeah. In the book Wreck of the Titan, it didn't break. It ended up going belly up and sinking. Which, I mean, would be equally as shitty if you were on the boat.
Yeah.
You know, imagine, like, being inside the hull and it fucking goes belly up and you're like, oh shit, what's going on? I'm inside, I don't know. And then you finally make it to the deck and you're like, no, I'm underwater. It's sinking and I'm gonna die. This sucks.
I wish we knew more about this Californian. I mean, how big of a boat could it have been to wreck the Titanic or Olympic?
Well, the thing is, it wouldn't even have to wreck it. It would just have to be able to pierce it so that the 5 decks would flood rather than the 4 that it was intended to.
Well, those decks, dude, if this was a sabotage and an intentional sinking, those 5 decks had to have some help in flooding.
Yeah. And, you know, we proposed 2 separate theories, the insurance claim theory and the Federal Reserve Bank theory. But who's to say that they weren't killing 2 birds with 1 stone? You know, I mean, you've got the witnesses saying that the ship was listing the whole time. And if it was a brand new ship, it shouldn't be doing that. But we know that the Olympic was involved in an accident beforehand that caused it to list.
Can you explain what listing is for those?
Basically, like, think of your car being out of alignment. You take your hands off the wheel and it starts going towards one side. It's the same deal with the ships, but it's their equipment. They don't have fucking wheels and axles and stuff but the hull of the ship, if it's bent in a certain way, it can cause it to list, or if the rudder's fucked up. But this was basically listing according to two separate witnesses. And if it was a new ship, it wouldn't have been listing. It would have been perfect. But the Olympic was said to have been listing after this accident, and it would have cost more to fix the ship than what it was worth. So it would make sense, if you can't get the insurance money, change the name and sink the motherfucker. Like, doesn't it seem weird though that the Titanic is the only ship in the fleet that had a nameplate riveted on rather than engraved in the hull?
Yeah, and I'm taking a closer look at that photo that's supposed to show the other words, and you can definitely make out an O for sure. And as we all know, there's no O in Titanic. But I mean, like we said before, they look pretty shitty. That could have been photoshopped quite easily.
Yeah, there's no, like, really... I mean, maybe there are, and you just can't find them on Google search. I don't know. But all the ones on Google search are from a distance, and it's just showing a rusty hull of a ship, basically.
Yeah, it could be any ship if it has an O.
Yeah, who's to say what you're seeing in Google Images is even the Titanic?
Yeah.
It could be any fucking sunken ship. You don't know.
Do you think this listing that was going on maybe was like a slight repositioning to meet this Californian ship? Like a adjusting?
No, I don't think so. Because I don't think it would have been listing in that way. That would have just been the course that they were setting.
Maybe they were just tiny adjustments, maybe subtle, just veering off to this direction.
Yeah, but I would that really be necessary? I mean, you got to think about it. This is a passenger luxury liner. Like, people on board are going to be relaxing, drinking, doing whatever people do on boats. They're not going to be paying attention to slight adjustments.
Yeah.
But if it's a constant listing where they see themselves going one way, then it corrects itself, then it goes back, and then it corrects itself, that you might be more inclined to notice that, especially if you're looking out a window over a period of time.
That definitely would have been worrisome. I would have been concerned about that.
Yeah, which is unfortunate. No UFO attacks. I do recall reading one time. This was way back, probably 15 years ago or more, but I was reading a book about weird things at sea, and there was talk about the Titanic, and there was a theory proposed in this book that it may have been attacked by a submarine, and it could have been torpedoes.
I mean, just the normal explanation itself of hitting a fucking iceberg is kind of weird, don't you think? You got the whole fucking ocean to drive this boat in, and you fucking hit something?
And that's the thing, because like I said, they had safeguards in effect. So they would be able to lose 4 decks or whatever before it would sink. And this one lost 5. Just one more. That seems a little weird. And the fact that the most powerful people opposed to the Federal Reserve died. And then the Federal Reserve was created, and our economy has changed considerably since then.
That's some crazy Mr. Glass shit. Destroy a huge amount of people to get like 10 people out of the way.
Yeah. I mean, it was over 1,000 people that died. Some estimates say 1,500. It's crazy.
And how many survived? About half, you said?
Yeah, well, it was 2,200 people on board. And the estimates for people that died range from half to 1,500.
Do you think that the lack of lifeboats could have support the idea that it was the Olympic, as maybe some of her lifeboats were damaged in her accident?
No, because I don't think the accident happened below. Like it would have been in the water line, not where the lifeboats were. So I don't think that accident had anything to do with the lifeboats. I think it was just thought that if an accident occurred, they would be able to maneuver the people out of there. And if you're going with the whole the Californian thing, then they it was set up. The Californian was there to rescue the people, but because it had its lights off, it collided and created this whole thing. But I guess apparently when the accident first happened and they were loading people up on the boats, a lot of people stayed behind thinking that rescue was on the way. People continued drinking or partying or doing whatever they were doing, thinking that there was enough time that they would be saved, but the rescue ship never came, and these people ended up dying.
Man, that's pretty horrible.
Yeah, it was one of the biggest disasters on record outside of wartime.
How long did they sit there until rescue did come?
I don't know. Let's look at that up. Let's look at that up. Do 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 do.
It took 2 hours and 40 minutes to sink. Let's see here.
Yeah, it started sinking at 11:40 p.m. So if it took a couple hours, it would have extended into April 15th. And apparently the hull wasn't punctured by the iceberg. It was dented so that the seams itself buckled and then separated, which allowed the water to come in.
Wow. Yeah, kind of sounds like something like a repaired ship would experience. Maybe not a brand new unsinkable ship.
Right. I guess the claims of the unsinkable thing only came after the fact.
Really?
Yeah. And according to the regular stories, the official story, the Californian was the last ship to be in contact with the Titanic before the collision. And they saw the flares, but they failed to assist. But, I mean, if the Californian was there and it wasn't hit, the flares they're sending up are white flares signaling that everything's okay, so they wouldn't go to assist them. If the Californian really was what got hit, then it would have rendered the ship useless. But you'd think the Californian would sink too. I think Gardner's theory there is flawed because the Californian didn't sink.
Well, I Googled how long did it take rescue to reach the Titanic? And what came up is how long did it take for the Carpathia to reach Titanic 4 hours later?
It said that they showed up around 4 a.m.
So all those people sat there for 4 hours in that icy water. That's not too bad. I mean, it had to be horrible, granted, but...
So, yeah, a little more than 4 hours later.
Yeah, in 15 minutes, they're gone.
Well, and you had a lot of people on lifeboats, too, but, yeah, the people that would have abandoned ship and just been floating on debris. 4 hours, they're in the northern Atlantic in April.
That'd be shitty to sit there and watch all these people in the water freeze, while you're sitting there all comfy in a lifeboat.
Yeah, it's going to be fucking cold, man. And the Carpathia was able to rescue 710 people and transport them to New York. But the captain of the Carpathia described the area as being an ice field. And he said that he saw 20 large icebergs that measured up to 200 feet. And that there were a bunch of smaller ones floating around.
See, that begs the question, why the fuck is a Titanic sailing around there anyway?
Well, maybe they were freak icebergs that they weren't expecting, but I don't know.
Yeah, I agree with that. How do you miss that? Maybe they were trying to get in close to show people these 200-foot tall icebergs and as an awing spectacle or something.
You think if there were that many, I would have to think that they would be seen. And even after the sinking and everything, there were conflicting reports, and apparently,
Really?
there was a story going around after it sunk that the Titanic was being towed back to port by a ship called the SS Virginian. But then later, a story came through that the Titanic had been lost and that most of the passengers and crew died.
That's a weird, I don't know, side story. Why would they even print that?
I don't know. It's like the Roswell thing. We have a flying disc. Nope, sorry, it was a weather balloon.
Yeah, that's exactly what I thought of. Everything's cool. They just took a bump. They're bringing them back. Oh, no, wait, it's gone and everybody's dead.
Yeah.
Wow.
No, never mind. It's underwater. Everyone's dead. Sorry.
Those reporters suck.
Yeah. You guys suck. Quit your jobs.
I've known a lot of people who go on cruises quite frequently, and I don't know. I've said before, we all know I don't like the ocean. I wouldn't even go
forest or outer space or Disney World,
anywhere my natural body's not supposed to be. But
yeah.
I don't think I'd be able to go on a cruise ship. You know, I've seen Titanic. I've seen a lot of documentaries on it and stuff, and just I don't know. That's nature's nature, man. I don't know.
I've gone on a cruise once, and it was actually a lot of fun. But there's you are at the mercy of fate, really. You know, if something goes wrong. Like, I remember a couple of years after I went on the cruise, there was that incident where the ship lost power and they ran out of food. And I'm like, God damn, like, that's not something you think about when everything's going fine. But after hearing that, I couldn't believe it. I'm like, fuck, dude, just imagine like being stuck on a ship with a bunch of strangers for fucking days. You have no food, no running water, no electricity.
And people end up dying during that, or?
No, I don't. I think that people were able to get saved, but they had enough food to last a while, but they were at sea. Like when they finally got rescued, like they were all running out of food. Because you got to think on a cruise, like you're feeding everybody all 3 meals. Plus there's on board, like, so for us, there was, you could get room service at any time, whatever you wanted. You could, typically I would, after a night of drinking, I would order cheeseburgers and have them delivered to my room, and it was awesome. But there's also like a bunch of different places you can eat on board, and then there's like the main dining hall where you eat your main dinner every night. But when you're eating there, you can get whatever you want. You could even get 2 entrees if you wanted. Like if you wanted steak and duck,
Really?
get steak and duck. Yeah. And so there's a shit ton of food on board. But they were running out by the time they got picked up, and they had no running water. I'm pretty sure that the sewage had started to become an issue.
People had separated into tribes and were eating each other.
Yeah, they're ready to kill each other. I mean, fuck, man. Just imagine that, though, because you're on a ship with all these fucking strangers. Hundreds of other people that you don't even fucking know. And you're in a high-stress situation. Yeah, it would suck.
See, that sounds unappealing enough.
Yeah, and people become assholes. They don't realize that at that point what you need most is a sense of community and some patience. A guy being an asshole is going to ruin it for fucking everybody. You're going to make everyone around you miserable. You create a scene that creates hardship for the people that work there, which then creates hardship for the people that are staying there. And yeah, no good, man. Just calm the fuck down. Women and children first. You calm the fuck down.
There's always going to be a few people who panic and freak the fuck out. And
yeah. We're going to put you in the brig, sir. Fuck your brig. We're going to make you walk the plank, motherfucker.
There's got to be like fishing fucking experiences or something that they do on that boat. I wonder what stopped that.
And usually all the stuff that you would do is when you go to port. They don't really offer anything
activity-wise.
Like, well, I mean, like, there's stuff to do on the ship. Like, they'll do, like, fucking, like, dance contests or, like, cannonball competitions or, you know, like, there's, like, a track that you can run around. There's a gym there. Like, there's tons of shit to do there, but it not, like, adventurous stuff. Like, as adventurous as it gets is climb the rock wall.
Ah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll pass. I don't want to be knee deep in poo poo water with like sharpened forks because someone's trying to steal my fucking granola bars.
Get off my granola bars, motherfucker!
Because I'll survive. I'll also go to jail, but I'll survive.
Give you 3 squares a day in jail.
I'll be sitting there. I'll never be hungry again.
Your taxes pay for my meals, bitch.
I wonder if there's any like free passes given in times of crisis at sea like that.
What? Go to jail passes?
Yeah, like we killed this guy because he tried to kill one of us, or.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm sure if it was done in protection of a group, you'd be fine. You've got a whole shitload of witnesses being like, this dude is freaking out. He was trying to eat a baby, and this guy clobbered him to death with a trash can. Oh. This man is a hero. Not to mention that cruise ships are loaded to the gills with liquor. So, I mean, you're in a survival situation.
That's true.
And you can get drunk. That doesn't sound like it's going to end well for anyone. At that point in time, I'd be like, all alcohol is being locked down.
Yeah.
No one is getting drunk.
Can you imagine that? Like just people wanting alcohol.
Right.
Getting out of hand, fueled by alcohol. Holy shit.
I would imagine.
They got to have some type of marshal aboard one of those things, right?
Yeah, I'm sure there's something like that. I didn't see any, but
a sea marshal.
The first day before you even leave port, they make everybody go out on deck based on where your room is, and you go through emergency procedures. Like if you have to abandon ship or if there's something going, you know, they walk you through all these different scenarios and what you have to do. And it's mandatory.
Wow.
You can't not go. They have people going to every single room checking to make sure that no one's trying to hide out from the emergency procedures demonstration.
Did they give you like a Cthulhu procedure? Sea monster attack?
No, there were no sea monster procedures. It was mostly relating to fire or accidents at sea. No Godzilla, no Cthulhu, no Kraken.
Accidents at sea. That's so weird.
Yeah, like a ship collision, or if a whole, you know, if the ship is sinking or whatever. Like they don't give you specifics like what caused this to happen. It's just like, all right, ship is sinking. This is what you have to do.
Well, that's good.
You were hit by a torpedo and you need to abandon now. There's a megalodon chewing on the back of the ship. Get the fuck off.
Jump directly in its mouth.
Yeah.
Pray for a quick death.
That's what you can do. Don't go out like Quint. Just head first.
Oh, that's horrible. Just place its head like where its teeth are going to land. Do it.
Just bite, motherfucker.
Thank you for listening to the Whatcast. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, iTunes, and YouTube. Enjoy the podcast. Get yourself a Whatcast t-shirt or a sticker pack. Who was that dude on that one episode? Try the links in Homie's page. All this and more can be found at www.thewhatcasters.com. Thanks again for listening and have a great week.